one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A quick roll call. Drew Martin.
Cindy Souza.
Marty Tar.
Bill Zolper, Town Manager.
And if you just do adoption of the agenda, make a motion on that.
So moved.
Second.
Great. Public comments? Here.
Just taking up oxygen.
All right, and then we'll just get to the approval of the minutes. Get a motion on that in a second. Anyone want to make a motion?
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that.
I can't.
Someone's got a motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Yeah.
As written.
Second.
I thought you guys were all reading it.
That's what I
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, two things, two quick questions. Is Dale, since he moved out, is he no longer going to be involved in the committee?
He's no longer on the committee, that's correct.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that, I just wanted
Yes.
to make sure. The other thing I wanted to just mention, I'm passing to Jim Tyler, he's gonna be missed. He was an integral part of this committee for a long time, did a lot of great things for this town. So I actually met with his son today, who brought me over all the old files
Good.
that he saved from the infrastructure committee. So I assume you guys would want him over to town someplace?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm happy.
Bring him over, or I'll come over to your residence and pick him up.
Yeah, but again, great man, he
Yeah.
will be missed.
He will indeed.
Again, just start off with what update from Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So before we start, I'd like to introduce Scott Sheffo. He is our maintenance supervisor. He's there with the hat on. He comes to us from Sussex County Water Department. He had been working over there underneath the Water Department where they have a sub-office for a number of years. And he has been a huge asset when we have issues like what you see on our street today. So, and he's done a nice job since he arrived. So I just want to point that out and say thank you, Scott.
Nice to meet you, Scott.
You do. Hey, Scott.
Just a couple updates. So the paving that was supposed to take place in the spring is now going to take place sometime after October 1st. That's going to be Allen and Myers. And it's still, as far as I know, they'll start in the north end.
And you're gonna do the entire north end now, right? You're not skipping any streets or?
So as of right now, first block of Chesapeake, all of Carolina, second block of New Jersey, second block of West Street belong to the town. I'm working to try to get CTF funding to help cover some of those. I got CTF funding for Dickinson Street, which was not included. The state said it didn't need to be paid, but after going down and looking at it, I was able to get CTF funding for the Ocean block of Dickinson. I will continue to try to do that for those streets in the north end. All right. Storm drains in the north end, especially on first block of Jersey, second block of Jersey. I've gotten 2 estimates so far. I'm looking for one more estimate. I met with somebody yesterday, hopefully to get that estimate sometime in the next 2 weeks. And we'll start those projects hopefully this winter in the north end. And that is to put 2 storm drains in and try to get the water to run from the second block of Jersey to start with, and the first block of Jersey down to King Charles into the infrastructure that's already in place.
Question that I might ask, for the areas where people park, in the right of way, the storm drains will be under that area, or like will it be a swale, or will it be a buried drain, like, just in terms of how it's gonna relate to people parking?
Yeah, I don't know 100%, but what I've asked when they looked at it was just a normal storm drain like you may see well, not as much on Reed Street, because Reed Street's off to the side with rocks around it, but the normal storm drains that you see maybe out on Route 1, they'll be right off the area in the right of way. Yeah, where people would park. And the work wouldn't be until the fall. Had a call today, the mayor and I did with the Army Corps of Engineers to talk about the money, the $1 million grant we got from Senator Coon's office. It went very well. We expect to do a site walk with the Army Corps of Engineers sometime in the next 3 weeks. And that will be for Reed Street down on the Bay side for a project down there.
Can I ask a question about the storm drains? Where, if it's just gonna be like a big grate like we see on the street, what happens underground? Where does it go? Is it just a big hole or?
It's a, what some people would call a dog box. So the water would run down into the dog box, and from there, depending on the gravity and the slope, and I don't have that yet, but hopefully there's enough of a slope where it will run from those drains down to King Charles by gravity pulling it down there, and then from there, the gravity takes it down towards
Just
Chesapeake
through-
Street.
Than just through dirt, or is there gonna be an actual drain like a concrete drain underground?
There'll be either depending on, so if it's a state-owned street, sometimes the state requires that the underground stormwater pipe is concrete.
Okay,
If it's a town-owned street, you may be able to use a different type of material than concrete to do the storm drains. I'm not an expert, but when we get the estimates, I'll make sure I brief you on it, especially if we're gonna have to come obtain funding from this committee.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Put a dune mat down there on Reed Street.
I'm sorry, what?
Dune mat down on Reed Street on the Bay side. You asked about that. It's been installed. Right? It's there. Again, the call today with the Army Corps of Engineers went really well. It's a grant where the town would pay 25% of the project. So if the project was $1 million, we would be responsible for $250. I don't think it'll be $1 million, but that's if we end up signing the contract with the Army Corps, that's the agreement we would have with them. And that's all I have for updates.
Also, there's a dune mat down the kayak.
Yes.
launch there. Oh,
Jill asked about that, and we were able to piece some pieces together and get it down there. Of course, during storms, it's probably gonna get pushed back up, and we'll have to keep an eye on it.
Is it anchored down there with screws or stuff, you know?
It's not.
Oh,
I tried.
I might have some spikes to do it.
Too many rocks.
That's all I have,
Will it
Chair.
float away?
What's that?
If water comes in
All right.
and it goes back out,
So-
will it float away?
I don't mean to interrupt you, but if Scott's gonna address the group, he has to come up here to the microphone, identify himself, and speak at the podium. If you're gonna answer questions, Scott, you're gonna have to come up front.
Obviously.
Well, no, so then people on Zoom can hear what he's saying.
Can everybody hear me?
Just tell me who you are.
Scott Sheffo, maintenance supervisor. Put the mat down. It's nailed in the middle between the brown and the blue. The blue goes out to the water. There's just too many big rocks out there to drive something in it. Somebody had put some big rocks on the end. I figured as long as nobody trips on it, I guess. Because when the water comes in, it's going to come back. And then we'll have to go pull it back again.
I think it's a great idea to put the rocks on the end. I mean, there's rocks there anyway when you're trying to get the paddleboard or kayak out there. So if there's two rocks aside, I don't think it's gonna make any difference because you gotta navigate the rocks anyway.
Right.
So I think that's a good idea.
Any other questions?
Just about if it would go back out, but
It's
it's some anchored. It is anchored. to
some of
road.
it's anchored. It won't go anywhere. It'll just get all twisted up and a mess.
Water is powerful.
Right. Good.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, I think next thing on the agenda, I see Chris here. Appreciate you coming today.
Happy to be here.
And then, so we're gonna get an update from RV on the project at the end of Reed Avenue.
Thank you. So my name is Chris Fazio with Remington and Vernick Engineers. Back in May, based on the authorization from the Infrastructure Committee that we received back in November, 3 flap valves were put in on the ends of the 3 outfalls. They were installed, they were verified by the town, and they've been observed since then. So my understanding is, the opinion of the town is the flooding's the same. Hasn't done anything to make it any better. Based on that, we had some additional conversations, had some additional investigation. And just to look at it holistically, let me take it back to day one. What was day one? On Reed Avenue, the first thing that was done was the storm pipes from SR1 down to the junction box, which is like 2/3, 3/4 of the way down the road towards the bay. They were aligned. So that being said, those pipes aren't leaking. They're whole, they're working properly. So I don't think there's an issue there. You look at the end of the 3 outfalls, new flap valves were put in. And I've got a lot of experience with these flap valves. They're kind of simple. They become submerged, they close. When they become open to air, they open. And as long as they're maintained and sediment and debris is removed from them, which I speak with your town manager, they've been very diligent doing that, they're gonna function. So I'm gonna work on an assumption that they work, because there's no way to verify. I don't have X-ray vision. I didn't dive into the high tide in the bay to look and see if they're closed or not. I'm gonna work under an assumption that they closed once they were submerged. That being said, what's left? The area from the junction box, which then leads into the 3 outfall pipes. Now, we agreed with the town, we didn't think they need to be investigated. Why? Because you had another engineering consultant back in 2019 put together a design and install them. So it's relatively new construction. You'd be surprised, you'd hope that it was constructed properly with good construction techniques. But I can't tell you if it was or it wasn't. I just can't tell you because I haven't seen it for myself. So my recommendation to the town, take away the last unknown, the last element you're not sure about, hire a contractor to come in, televise those 3 pipes, look inside, and if they're defective, have them line the pipes that are defective. Look inside the junction box that's there. If the junction box has depressions, has holes, has penetrations, then there's a methodology. You can spray the inside of it. You can seal it so that it's watertight. I think that's your next and final step, because that's the only thing you have in sight. It's the only thing you haven't looked at. That could be suspect.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
So you said you're going under the assumption that the flap valves work. I mean, we know when high tide is, when the moon cycle is, so we kind of know when they should be more activated between the weather and the tides. Has anyone just anecdotally gone out there, you thought these things should have been working, and seeing if they work or not?
You just can't
Yes, I have
see.
tested these, I've been testing them at every high tide since they were installed.
Okay.
And they have failed every high tide where it's over 2 feet. And I've determined this by measuring the specific gravity of the water in the street. If it is rainwater, it's got a specific gravity of 1.000.
Okay.
The water that is in the pipe there, and I've got a bottle of it if you'd like to have it, is 1.02, exactly the same as the bay water, indicating saline and contamination coming in through those gates. We did not have bay water flooding for 2 years with the gates that were in the middle of those pipes that were put in by the Center for Inland Bays and RKK or whomever. And
It was Arcane K.
they have been flooding with every high tide since they were installed. And I've got the data, dates, times for the whole time.
I believe what you're saying, but I will tell you that it's also possible that you would get those same results from groundwater that could be flowing into the pipe.
No, you will not. It flooded several days ago. Bill and I talked about this and I took pictures. I went down and checked the specific gravity of the flooding in front of the Brules, which is 50 feet from the bay, 1.000, indicating it's rainwater. The end of Reed Avenue drains, do you know how many acres?
No, I don't off the top of my head.
28 acres in Dewey Beach. All right? It is the lowest place there. That water is going to drain, rainwater, groundwater, whatever you call it, for several days after a long rain. And if you have a high tide, the water can't go out. We've had a low high tides, if you were, this past week. Hasn't been much over 1.6, 1.7 or so. So there hasn't been any encroachment of bay water that I'm aware of. But on the other hand, the pool of water that is there is groundwater flowing that way with a specific gravity indicating that it's groundwater and not bay water. Those gates do not work.
The only way I can tell you if they don't or don't work is if I see it myself, and I can't see it when it's submerged underwater.
And I would
If-
suggest to you that when it's a high tide, and I'll send you the links of the tidal.
No, I have it on, I have it online, thank you. I know how to
Then why
read the
have you
tide.
not come down and looked at it during high tide?
How can you see through the water to see if they're closed, if it's submerged? You can't.
If there's bay water in the street, the water is coming through them, period.
The only way you're gonna know definitively if they close while they're submerged is to have a diver go and look at them when
So,
they're
so
submerged.
are you saying that the water's coming, the bay water is coming from somewhere else and not the gates? Is that what you're saying?
I'm telling you that to know what the answer is, you have to take out all the unknowns. And there's one last unknown, and that's looking at the inside of the three pipes and the inside of that junction box to see what's happening and see if there's any penetrations that are causing excessive flooding to occur.
How about if water dye goes through it? Would that convince you?
No, it wouldn't,
Why wouldn't it?
because I want to televise and see it for myself. I don't want to guess. That's my recommendation to you.
So you're making a recommendation to look at something else and see if that's the problem, but even if we did that, and we found out that that wasn't a problem, then we still have to come back and look at these flap valves again, right? Because that's what, you know what I mean? So you're kind of skipping over one thing and kind of going to another thing and saying, oh, if you do this, then maybe I'll look at it later. I mean, why not look at it now? I mean, he seems like he's gotten a fair amount of physical evidence that it is bay water in the street. And no one seems to have another probable source of that bay water other than those pipes.
I have no issue looking at it. The only thing I'm going to say is for you to look at, you have to get a diver, is my point.
Well, what do you say about my data? That there is bay water on the street at the end of Reed when it's a high tide over 2 feet and it has a specific gravity the same as bay water. How do you explain that?
It's hard to.
It has to come through those gates, period.
So I will say to you that I did hear the town's question, does the valve work? Do the flap valves work? And we went back to Ajon, who was the construction company who installed them. I mean, they're on the call, they're prepared to make a statement about them, but I believe they reached out to the manufacturer, and apparently they were installed correctly, and there should not be an issue with the valve.
So, scientific data, measurement data notwithstanding, you say they've got to work, so therefore they're working. That's essentially what you're saying.
No, I'm telling you, they don't work. There's one way I can say that, and that's if I see them physically don't open while they're submerged. So that being said, to truly say if they work or don't work, a diver needs to go down and observe them while they're in a high tide condition.
That makes no sense.
It's the only way
Proof
someone
is
can
there.
say it.
The proof is there that bay water has come through. Do you know anywhere else it could come from? No.
I'd like to know what's inside that junction box, what's inside the pipes before I would answer that question, which is why I'm recommending you televise, you look inside the junction box,
You're talking about the junction box that has the drain
where the
pipe
three
and
pipes
three
lead
pipes?
into.
Oh, yes.
Correct.
What on earth could be the matter with
So I
that?
have one question about that. So was the contractor that put the valves, big valves on, it's the same contractor that removed the old rusted ones that were inside the pipe?
Yes.
So I would suspect one thing, based on them not sealing the holes on the old valves, the ones up on the inside, were they sealed properly?
So my understanding is because they were wedged in so tightly, they had to actually cut the valve out, leaving the,
Okay.
I guess, circumference of wherever the foundation of the original valve was. So I don't think they, I don't know if they did or not, but I don't believe they harmed the pipe in cutting it out.
I see.
I don't know though, obviously.
So we don't have any camera views since that was done of that
None.
pipe, or anything on the inside?
Again, we've never investigated the junction box nor the three outfall pipes because it was new construction. We felt it was highly unlikely there was an issue with it.
Chris, where would the water be coming from if there was a danger if there was something defective in the junction box? Where would the bay water be coming from that comes out of that?
It's either coming from the three flap valves or it's coming from an issue with the three pipes or an issue with the junction box.
Where's the water coming from? It has to be coming through those pipes that are in the bed.
Look, we've been Band-Aiding this thing. First, we did the first set of pipes and we lined them, good decision. Then we put the flat valves on, good decision. I think we need to look at the whole road holistically and look at the whole underground infrastructure before we do more work and not know if it's gonna work or not.
That water has to come through those gates. I don't understand how you could deny.
Look, I respect your opinion, I respect the fact that you've taken data and whatnot, I'm giving you my opinion.
And I'm giving you facts.
So if I could, Kate, could you throw the pictures up real quick? So the work was supposed to start in April, but because of problems with the tides, it really didn't start until May. I was out there several nights with them while they were trying to work during the lowest tides. It was usually after 6 o'clock at night. Some of the workers were very frustrated, and I know we've got the company on here and they can address some of the things I'm going to say.
It's their people,
It's
sure.
their people. They were very frustrated trying to put the flaps on. Comment from one of the individuals, a supervisor there, was that these aren't going to work. But they got them on. They installed them. And then another night I came back after they installed those. In the box that Chris is describing, they had taken the grate off that. And this box is the concrete box that the stormwater pipe runs down the street to. And then from there, the 36-inch rib pipes that the flaps are on that go out into the bay. So it's a box that captures the water, and then it goes out the 3 pipes to the bay. They had that off. They had a generator, and they had a pump. And what they were trying to do was they plugged the hole coming from the street with the stormwater to keep it from coming into the box. And then they were pumping the water out of that box. This is as far as I could tell. They were pumping the water out of that box, and they had a camera. And then they were going to do kind of what Chris is talking about. They were going to send a camera in there because they had taken all 3 flaps, and they had used winches, and they clamped them down as tight as they could. And they were trying to drain the water out of that to send the camera in. The generator stopped working. It was probably 7 o'clock at night. The senior person on the ground said, this isn't gonna, he just said he got frustrated, he said some things, and he left. And they packed up and left, and they never came back. And Chris and I have discussed this. I'm very disappointed by the way that was left. Now, Chris did point out to me that what they were doing wasn't in the contract. But my concern was they were trying to do it for a reason. They were trying to see if those flaps were really working after they put a plug in the stormwater and they winched down those 3 to see if it was leaking, like what you're saying, Chris. But they never came back and they never tried it, and I never got an answer on why, except for, well, it wasn't in the contract. So I was very disappointed by that answer. But as you can see from some of these pictures, this was after the flaps were put on. Kate, if you go through the pictures real quick. That's a more recent picture. That's what we're talking about when you're talking
That's
about
the junction
lifting
box.
the junction box. Kate, go through the other ones. Keep going. That's at a high tide. This is a recent picture. I was out there July 16th.
It's Tuesday.
I took that picture there during a high tide. Now, Martin Buell had talked to me, Phil had talked to me about it, Drew had talked to me about it. That's what we got during a high tide at that time. Does that mean the flaps are working or not? I don't know. Chris asked me the other day on a call, Bill, are the flaps working? And I told him, I don't know if they're working or not. I didn't install them. I'm not an expert on flaps. The guys that are on here, they might be able to tell you they're working, but I can't tell you the flaps are working. I just can't tell you if they're working or if they're not working. But what I can tell you was the company was draining that box and getting ready to send a camera in there to check out those 3 pipes. The generator broke and they never came back. So there's another picture there. That's a little bit later in May. If you go through another one, that's another picture a little bit later in May. That's a May picture, June. So during extreme high tides, we still are getting a lot of water. I would just say the pictures that you sent me, Phil, what you and I have looked about, what Martin Jewell sent me, wasn't during an extreme high tide. I think it was during kind of a normal high tide.
It doesn't have to be an extreme or high tide.
Right, and you saw the water there. But that's kind of been my experience during this process. I haven't paid the $52,000 bill yet, but at some point we're going to need to pay that. All right. I was also a little disappointed that when they took the grates off the three pipes, the outside grates, it kept animals from going inside them before they put the flaps on. There were screws that were holding those grates on the top of the pipes. And when they completed the work, they left those, and they're not very big holes. They're probably 3 inches by maybe an inch wide, but they were on top of all three. So when you got a high tide, the water came over those and went down inside. So I discovered that. I called them back, discussed it with one of their engineers who came out there on the site. We looked at them, and then a couple weeks later, I went back out to look, and they had been epoxied over and with some strong looking duct tape, except one of the holes, the epoxy had split back apart again. And it's not a very big hole, it's probably 3/4 of an inch by 3 inches, but it's still letting water in. Just disappointed by the way they ended up covering those holes. And then last night, I got an email saying, we'll be out at 4:30 in the morning to take care of that last hole. And I said, that's unacceptable, because I want to be out there seeing when they're going to do it. And they said that's when they would do it. Then they came back at 6. They said we could come back tomorrow morning at 6. So I'm kind of frustrated with not only with the flaps, but also with the folks that installed them from the town. Just very frustrating.
So, hearing all this stuff, what I'm hearing is, and I get that, you feel that from the design, they should be working, and I understand that. Phil's clearly gathered some evidence that he feels, and it sounds to me like there's pretty solid evidence that, the brackish water with that specific gravity is getting into the street, and that's the only possible source of it. So it strikes me that I think the next logical step is really to demonstrate that these pipes are working or are not working, is to make that determination. I respect your opinion that there could potentially be a problem with the Junction box, but it strikes me as this is the work we have done. This is probably where this water that you're talking about is coming from. So an affirmative determination needs to be made one way or another that those are working. I don't know anything about how you make that determination that they're working or not. So what I would like to hear from you is how you would, what your recommendation would be to how you determine that they're working, and I would like to hear from our committee is whether that plan of approach for determining if they're working or not is satisfactory to you. Does that sound reasonable?
So
One of the things I have is I've got a large supply of sodium fluorescein, which is, you probably know what it is.
Sure.
The strong dye. And when we have a high tide coming, I would be glad to dye the water again, and let's see if that comes through. And of course, you're gonna have to take a sample of it, because it's not necessarily going to be visible, but it'll be visible outside, I guarantee. I've done that. And
So I think there's two things you can do. The second one's pretty easy. The first one is repair. Literally there's diving companies. Literally get a diving company to observe it, see if it closed when the tide goes up. Because they'll do it safely. They have their own safety parameters. They can do it safely. The second thing you could do is ask the contractor to contact the manufacturer. The manufacturer's rep is always willing to have conversations with folks, especially when it's about one of their products, and give you a feeling of comfort that it was installed correctly and functions properly.
So the manufacturer would need to demonstrate that it is, not just an opinion. I mean, I think at this point, we really want to know, as installed,
Right.
Are these working or are they not working? And, you mentioned the diver, option, I don't know what's really needed, whether just an underwater GoPro could be, enough for someone to do it or not, is in a wetsuit.
Well, it's a safety issue, so you want to have someone who's experienced, and, that's why I'm suggesting a trained diver.
So, you guys tell me if you think that is a sufficient way to do this. I mean, that's.
Bill, do you have an update on what you did? right
Yeah,
now?
so that was the last piece. So after talking to some other folks, working with Scott's actually been in the water up to here, keeping around the flaps clear of debris. We went ahead and looked at all 3 of those outfall pipes. The one with the lowest grade is the southernmost pipe, outfall. So we took the north side pipe and the center pipe, and we strapped them closed as tight as we could. As tight as we could, 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago? And since we've done that, we've left one flap open, just one. And we haven't had any real extreme high tides, but we still get that little bit that you saw in that one picture that was taken 2 days ago. But it seems to, when we strap them down, right, it seems to help. Whether it's because there hasn't been an extreme high tide or not, I couldn't tell you. You live on the street, so you see what's coming in and out of there. But about a week and a half ago, we strapped 2 of those flaps completely shut.
Is there a full moon coming up, anytime soon where we could,
Full moon doesn't always do it.
doesn't always do
It
it?
didn't do it this last time, yeah, at all. But Bill, those pools you're talking about two days ago, 8 o'clock, or whatever, I went down and they're 1.000. So there's still groundwater moving this way from the 28 acres. So that was not any bay water in that, which I thought was interesting.
And it was interesting that just with the one pipe open, on the southern pipe open, we got 4 or 5 inches of rain
Yeah.
in that course. And
Last Friday.
And the street drained.
It drained,
One
yeah.
pipe.
Once the tide goes down, it
Yeah.
drains quickly.
You know, we've said this in the past, I don't know why there's 3 pipes. We looked at that Arcane K design, for the life of me, I don't know why they did 3.
As I recall, when you guys came in to do your work, those 2 pipes from the north were clogged up
Yeah,
anyway.
Mhm.
And the other one seemed to be working fine. Why they put in 3 pipes in the first place, I have no idea. Except it seemed like a good idea at the time. But whether it was necessary or, I don't know. I'm not enough of an engineer to figure the volume of water and the rate.
and maybe it was a volume issue, you need 3 pipes with that capacity for the volume, but, you know, it's odd, that's all.
Well, we definitely had discussion about whether, with the volume of water over 3 pipes, how that would affect the operation. I mean, that was definitely a discussion topic that we had. I don't, like other people, I don't have any specific knowledge that I would know what kind of flow rate is needed or anything, or gravity.
And we've never been asked to investigate that, so I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, unfortunately, in this situation, we're in the middle of the summer where we don't have street flooding. We just historically just don't have it unless we have an event, whether it be a nor'easter or something like that. So the experiment, which the experiment would be, maybe start with what you're doing right now, which is clamping down one at a time and seeing which one might be faulty, which one's not working right, you do that, and then closing off the other pipe and then videoing. And I guess videoing it first would be the best, just to see how much groundwater, if we're getting groundwater in there, but according to what Phil's getting, that doesn't seem to be, groundwater doesn't seem to be the issue there. But I know we had that discussion, whether we could do something like that. Now, whether the town is financially responsible for trying to experiment on that, to try to prove that these gates work, because that's where we're at this point, we've got to prove that the gates work. I don't know if that's our responsibility to do that or not, because based on these experiments and visual evidence, something isn't working.
I would recommend, ask the contractor to have the manufacturer come in, verify they were installed properly, verify the valves are in good working condition. If they were installed properly and they're in good working condition, they should be working, assuming that they're free of debris, and I know Bill has been very good about making sure of that.
I need to ask a question. Something you said a few minutes ago about the workers didn't replace the bolts, and then you went back and it had been duct taped. Are we paying these people for this shoddy workmanship?
So I haven't made a payment yet. We were billed back in May when the work was completed, right? And I've held that, and I've been talking to Chris and Kevin, why I've been holding it. Because I'm really trying, before we pay this, I want to make sure we've tried every option we can to say that they were installed properly and they're working the way they should. So no, I have not paid anything yet. But I was very disappointed to find these holes in the top of these pipes, that we just had these $52,000 valves put on, flaps, but yet we had these holes that were about, in the top of the pipes. And when I reached out, I got somebody from their company to come down, meet me, and he said they'd come back and fix them. They duct taped them and they put this epoxy on it, and then one of them again split back open. So as long as that split back open, I don't plan on making a payment.
And who is supervising the people who are coming out to do this work? I mean, where is someone?
They're on, I think they're on Zoom, and they could explain that.
Because I understand the workers might be getting frustrated, but there has to be somebody overseeing the work who is helping them to adjust to whatever work they have to do. That's what a boss does.
That person's on the call right now. If you want to hear from them, I'm sure they'd be happy to
Yeah.
communicate with you. Is
Yes,
I'd like to hear from him.
that
Yes.
okay, Bill?
Well, it's Drew's
I'm
meeting.
sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I mean, it's time to hear from him.
I'll help.
So Jody, I see your name on there. Do you want to address the comments that were made?
You're muted.
This is John.
He goes by Jody, but that's who the person's from AGM.
He goes by Jody?
Jody, Jody.
Okay.
He's muted.
Sure. I have a couple of comments. The crews are headed by a supervisor. I'm muted.
We can hear you now.
Hold on. Am I muted?
No.
I don't show muted.
Oh, then my crew has been hosting.
Did you mute me?
We can hear you.
Here we go.
Yep, Jody, you're not muted now. You can speak freely.
Okay. Okay, great. And he dictates what the people do. Now it's back talking. Anyway, they were frustrated. It was a difficult task to be in that water and trying to put the valves on. Yes. Okay, it was a difficult task.
Jody, we can't hear you if you're trying to speak. Or are you trying to communicate right now?
Okay, so they also expressed
Trying to do this from cell phone?
No, I mean, I saw him and his assistant
I'm blaming on purpose.
setting it up.
Okay,
earlier.
I think I'm going to go now. Yes, I'm trying to communicate. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Jody, we can hear you.
Okay. There is a supervisor in charge, and that supervisor does.
If he calls a cell phone, is that admissible? If we put it to a microphone?
I mean, you can call in by cell.
Okay.
With a mic.
There is a supervisor, and he dictates what the crew does.
Sounds like there's somebody else on this.
Dictate what they do. They had frustration because it was a difficult working environment.
Poor internet connection.
Kate, do you want me to give them the
I think it's
dial
muted
number?
right now.
Maybe the person talking in his ear should
Dial it
talk
out,
to us.
So I got here early, and he and his assistant were on here. You could see them. So he was in an office.
It's like someone's talking to
Well,
him.
They're asking, do you have a number for us to call?
Yeah, their camera's off and they're muted.
I think they might have a poor internet connection. Sounds like to me. I mean, which number should you call your number, Bill? And is that permissible if we put on?
Yeah, I don't see why not, right, Kate? I mean, they could call in on my phone. Yeah.
But I mean, Kate, you can just give them a dial
Can you hear us now?
into a phone.
Yes.
Here we go.
Kevin, can you hear me?
We can hear and
We
see
can-
you.
We can hear you and see you.
Wait,
Sort of.
sorry.
Well, what it's doing, it's going backwards, and it's
He's talking.
We can't hear you.
Now he's muted.
Yeah, because it's coming through the conference, not the phone.
but video's on.
So I think he's calling my colleague Kevin, who's also on the call, to say, can they hear me this evening? Is my guess.
Yes, Chris.
Okay, we're gonna start now. We're gonna start. You cannot hear me?
We can hear
Okay,
you.
can you hear
We
me
can
now?
see you.
And we can see you. You're muted, Jody.
But we have a delay on
Can
our
you hear me
end.
now?
Does he have your cell phone, Bill?
He does have my cell number.
Jody, listen, can you?
We have a
can you
supervisor
listen?
who supervises.
Jody,
the
Jody, Jody,
crews.
Jody,
They were
Jody.
frustrated in that they were working in the water there. There was trouble. It was a difficult installation to get those.
Go ahead.
I am delayed, and that's why you can't hear me, because I'm actually, it should come up in a minute.
All right, Jody, call Bill Zoper's cell phone, please.
Yes,
Call Bill's cell phone.
Yeah, low moment technology.
Don't work without the internet.
What's the number?
I'll call him. I think I got him right. Hey, Jody.
hello, Bill.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm here.
go ahead.
Okay. To answer the lady's question, yes, we do have a supervisor who was supervising them. That was Justin Stone, and also Jeremy Bibb came down once they were experiencing frustration. And they, yeah. Okay, I'm here. Go ahead.
Jody, we can hear you on my phone. Just keep talking. Turn your Zoom off.
Okay, I'm gonna turn the Zoom off.
Unplug your computer.
Experiencing frustration. Okay, you can hear me now.
We can.
So we did have actually two supervisors down there to help out with the situation. What we ended up doing was, once the valves were installed and they were working, we ended up having some extra time, so we decided to go in and try to clean out what was behind them, if there was anything there. We also tried to do a video so we could see what was between the junction box and those pipes, because there's three pipes and we weren't sure if they were leaking or not, and we thought we'd take a look at those. That was a free service. We decided to do it. They could not dewater the junction box. We did plug off from SR1 to the junction box, which was a good line, which didn't leak anyway. That was plugged off. So something was leaking into that junction box from the bank. Now, all of those valves were clamped shut. So therefore, you have to assume that the water coming into that junction box was not coming through the pipes. It was coming from some other source. My question would be, that whole area is surrounded by riprap, and I do not believe that riprap is impermeable. So you will have bay water coming in through the riprap, going into the area and surrounding the area and contaminating the groundwater, if you want to call it that, the 1.0 groundwater, and raising the levels there. And that's the water that is probably seeping into one of those three or whatever existing pipes, and also going into the junction box. That's what my opinion is as an engineer. I don't know. We won't know until we examine that junction box and those pipes. But that is something that was outside of our scope. We did not design that. We also did not design the gates It was not our choice to put those gates in. We were just responding to a request, and we bought the gates and we installed them. And they are installed correctly. I talked to the manufacturer. I told him what we did, showed him a picture. He said, yes, they're installed correctly and they should work. And I asked them if there's any kind of test to do. And they said they've never had to do that. And they're not aware of any method that would be suitable that would show you that they're properly sealing and closed all the way.
Bill, could you ask him a question, which is, he said that when they installed them, they verified that they were working, and I want to understand how they verified that they were working.
So Jody, the question is, when they were installed, you said you verified that they were working. How did you do that?
They went up and down, and as the tide was coming up, they started to close. We saw them close. When the tide went down, they opened. But again, we didn't see them seal tight and make sure they were completely watertight, because you couldn't do that once they were under the water. But you could reach down and feel and see that they were closed. We also, if you remember, we clamped them shut, and you still got water into that area with all three valves clamped shut. That tells me that the water was not coming through those valves. It was coming from the surrounding groundwater, which what I would have to say would have to be infiltrated with bay water.
Did you videotape that?
What's that?
Did you videotape that?
No, I did not. But I think it's from your own statements that they were clamped, and then we put a plug onto the line on the other end coming from SR1, and we still could not dewater the box.
Yeah, when I was there, Jody, they were trying to dewater the box, but the generator broke. The supervisor there was frustrated and left.
And that's where he came, and that's what he was talking about. He was left. Now, you say we ever came back. We did come back, because we came back and we finished all the grading, we finished the plantings, we put the fence back up, we did all that kind of stuff to return the site to its original condition. But as far as coming back to try and clean out those lines and videotape it, no, we did not come back, because quite frankly, that was outside of our scope, and we had already given you a tremendous discount. If you remember, the original price for this job was in the area of almost $80,000, and that's what was accepted a year ago, and it's down to $52,000 now. So, again, we did what we were supposed to do. We came in, we installed the valves, and why they didn't fill those holes, I agree with that one. They should have filled them before they left. We did send somebody down there, and three of them, or he only filled two and one he didn't. But I think, we're having a guy come down. We'd like to have him come down early tomorrow, because again, we're working with the tides.
So, one question, you're making a pretty definitive statement that there's groundwater leaking into these pipes, but based on Bill's discussions with the guys on site, they were unable to get the water out of the pipes because the generator didn't work, and there's always standing water in these pipes all the time. So if there's standing water in the pipes, how are we to determine that there's water getting into the pipe?
No. The inlet box was plugged, entering the junction box, and the three valves were clamped shut. That would make that whole area in between those two an area that could be dewatered with a pump.
But they didn't. But Jody, they didn't complete that because the generator broke. I mean, I was standing there with them, and that's what they were trying to do. And when it broke, they left.
Yeah, but wasn't it also that they weren't making any progress regardless? They were pumping and it still wasn't going down?
I don't know that. He didn't tell me that. I was standing there with him. It was raining a little bit.
That's the report I got. Yeah. I talked to Justin Stone, who you met out there, and I talked to him, and that's what he told me. I was not out there the day that they were pumping, so I can't attest to that myself, but I asked him, I asked him about who said the comments and what they meant, and I asked him about how the activities went as far as dewatering and pumping out that box.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Hey, Jody, this is Chris Fazio. A quick question for you. I hear that you plugged the SR1 pipe discharge into the junction box. I'm hearing that you clamped the 3 flap valves shut. I'm hearing you had a generator. You're trying to pump the junction box dry, and you couldn't do it.
Yes.
There was a feeling here, I think, that, you were trying to test to see if the valves were working, and you said, I'm out of here, I've had enough of this. But it sounds like what you're saying is, for a period of time, you couldn't get the water out because it was coming in through another part of the junction box. Is that how you're feeling? Is that what you're saying to everybody?
Yes, that is my feeling, and we were not pumping it out to see if the valves worked. We were pumping it out to see if we get a video of the balance of those lines. That was simply it.
How long were you pumping for after you closed all the orifices,
As I told you,
orifice
I
off?
was not there. I do not know.
Okay.
So I was there, they were doing it, and then the generator broke, and they left, so.
How long, do you know, Bill, how long they were pumping?
I don't know that. I was there for probably 20 minutes, watching them. They had the camera ready to go with the truck there, and I was hoping to see what they were gonna see by looking at the monitor in the truck.
If they were
Right,
pumping for
right.
20 minutes, I would think that within 10, they would have gotten that dewatered. And Jody, over well, you don't know, but I'm wondering, over the 20 minutes, did it go down at all, or did it kind of stay in the same? Because that to me then goes back to what I first said. I think we have to look at that
And
junction
I'll
box.
talk to them. I'll talk
Look
to
at
them
the 3
again and ask
pipes.
them, but I don't know the answer to that question, so I can't provide any additional information than what I had.
And I don't disagree with your analysis at all. That's not where I was going, but there's something else going on there. There's something else happening there.
And I understand this test wasn't in the scope of your work, but so just based on what you're saying, it leaves a big question mark, because if they continue to pump, your first comment was, well, the water's gotta be coming in from elsewhere, or the valves aren't working and it's just pulling water in. The more they pump, it just keeps pulling water in because the valves aren't working. And that's what we don't know, and
But
that we need
remember,
to get an answer.
those valves were clamped, they were clamped shut. That's the key.
For me, that's new information. I didn't realize all 3 were clamped when he did this operation. So that
They were, I was there, I looked, like I said, I was there probably 20 minutes, looking at what was going on. It was starting to rain, the guys were getting frustrated, and when the generator stopped, they left.
So, help me understand if your hypothesis that maybe the water's getting to the junction box from somewhere else. That junction box was put in, what, 5 years ago? Was that when that went in? 5, 6 years ago?
2019?
Yeah.
Okay, so how could it take that volume of water as a leak? You know what I mean? Because it connects to the 3 pipes and then the upstream pipe, and I think it may have one that goes off to the side.
It shouldn't.
You know, I mean,
The only
how
thing
can
I
it have
can-
that big a leak? You
the
know,
only
I
thing I
can
can-
see it maybe having a hairline crack,
I-
but how does it have that big a leak?
I've had situations similar to this in other places, and we televise the pipe, and you see there's another pipe going into it. I'm hypothesizing, just like you said, but I've seen some very strange things in my time. I see the pipes tied into pipes that you wouldn't expect.
But we have the map of all the pipes.
We do,
We know-
they came down and did it.
You have a map of what you're aware of.
No, we have a map of what your team told us was there, using the contractor when we relined the
It's a
pipes.
survey.
Yeah, so we have the north portion, but we never televised the 3 pipes built into that junction box. We didn't do it.
Going from the junction box out to the bay, I don't know if those were
They
televised,
were
but
never
everything
done.
coming into that box was.
Right.
Go from SR1 to the box was done, not the box, and not the box to the bay.
And
Because
is there another pipe going into that junction box besides the 3 and 1, or is there a 4th pipe going somewhere else? I'm trying to remember.
I
I'm just
don't-
like going from my.
I don't believe there is.
I believe there's the one pipe coming in on the road,
Yeah,
and that goes into the box, and there's 3 pipes going out.
And that was put in 2019.
Yeah.
Yes, so I go back to what I was saying, which is, I don't see how this thing could have such a big leak to get the volume of water we're seeing on the street in an event. It just, if it was just like a groundwater leak, it's just not gonna let in that volume of water, you know?
I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. And that's why the town didn't even bother looking at it, because it was new, relatively new construction.
Right.
If it was construction, even averagely well, it shouldn't leak. But there's gotta be something happening there, we don't know what it is.
And it could be damaged when they remove the inline valves. It's possible, I mean, anything's possible until you
So you look
at
and
it.
know.
So you're saying that some of the culverts going out may have holes in them and the groundwater is going through that? Is that the leak you're talking
I
about?
don't
What's the
know.
leak?
I don't know. So there could be a penetration in the side of the junction box. It's interesting when you see where the flooding ends. It's been pretty consistent since the flat valves were put in. It's been pretty consistent by that junction box.
And where the lines connect to the junction box, you could have a failure there.
And if you're getting seawater, then that would say that you're getting a penetration fairly close to the valves, I would think.
That
Not
box
further
is
back.
very close to the bed.
If there's a
That's on that
penetration,
can't
if there's a penetration on the side of one of those three pipes, just one of them, you're gonna get what you got. Because it's gonna go in. It's gonna bypass the flap valve and go right in. And again, that's something that would cause it. I can't tell you if that's what it is, because we haven't televised, I don't know.
Well, right now, we have holes in the top, so we're definitely.
There are three small holes and they're not significant enough to cause the problems you're having. But they need to be fixed. But they're not big enough, there's not enough circumference to let that much water in to create the problems you're having.
So we have to dig up the whole berm and the beach there, take those pipes out and check them and put them back in.
No, you're gonna televise it, it's not invasive. You're gonna televise.
So I think, and I'm not an engineer, the easiest thing to do would be to plug the pipe coming in from Route 1 that comes into the junction box. Plug the pipe, the three pipes that go out, plug all three of those at the junction box also. And then in the next big high tide, see if any water comes in. So do you understand? So the three pipes that go from the junction box out to the bay, plug all three of those. I mean, I think that we could do that ourselves without bringing any contractor in. Plug those ourselves. They're inflatable, some of them. And then see during a high tide, and if it is somewhere in there, we'll be able to determine that it's not the box. At least we can eliminate the box at that
You
time.
know it's not the flaps. You know it's not the flaps because the flaps
That's
are
about the
shut.
flaps, right?
Right,
So you wanna block, what you wanna do is you wanna block
if
all,
it's dry.
you wanna block all three flaps when you know a tide's coming in. And then if we're still have the same problem, then you know it's not coming from the flaps, is basically what you're.
Yeah, you gotta close off Route 1 pipe, and then you gotta pump it out
Right.
before.
It's gotta be bone dry before it happens.
Yeah.
If you can get it
So-
bone dry, that'll tell you something also.
So I think we can do that without hiring anybody. But
Well, currently, two of them are closed.
currently, two of them are strapped down as tight as we can get them. Tighter than they would be if gravity from the high tide was pushing against them. I mean, they're strapped down right now.
So
Okay,
all you have to do is close the third one.
Next time we have real high tides and it hasn't rained for a couple days, knock on wood, stuff like that, I'm gonna put fluorescein dye back in there again. Now, if that dye comes up into the street, is that not proof positive that the gates or the pipes are leaking?
So, number one, make sure Denmark is okay with you putting something into a water bottle. I have to put that on record. So where are you gonna put the dye in?
I think this time I'm gonna put a little device right in, think of something like a soaked tampon or something like that in front of each gate with a thing. So
In each gate?
all the
In front of each
water around the
flap?
front of each pipe is
Okay,
gonna be green.
okay.
Yeah.
So let's work under the assumption there's a hole or penetration in one of those three outfall pipes. Your tampon is gonna go around the side, it's gonna get into the side of the broken pipe and go back up again. I don't know if that's gonna be.
Oh, no, absolutely, but it's gonna show
I'll tell you
that the bay water is coming either the gate or the pipe, one way or
Okay.
another,
Okay,
okay?
I got you.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, based on your measurements, you're already determined that.
Mhm.
More or less, but it would be nice if we have some more.
Yeah.
So is it also possible for you to close the junction box from the street? I mean, that's what you were talking about. I mean, we could do all three plus that so that it's everything in the middle is.
It is possible for probably Scott and I to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it is clear that Baywater is encroaching, one way or another. Baywater is coming onto that street, specific gravity proves that, okay? Where that is,
Anybody else have any more questions for Jody?
Thank you, Jody.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, I think it's definitely, thank you for your help, Chris, thank you
Yeah,
for
happy to.
all your information. I did notice one thing on this, how is the relationship between RVE and this contractor? What is that relationship? How does this contract work? You're overseeing their work?
So the town has us, the town asked us to go to Aegon, who's the contractor, they're the construction contractor. So Remington and Vernick engineers, we're not contractors, we don't dig, we design, we recommend, we're engineers. So we were asked to go to Aegon and get pricing from them to install 3 valves. We did that. Did negotiation on behalf of the town to try to get the price a little more manageable, gave it to the town accepted it, and then they entered into a contract with Aegon to do the construction.
Yeah, if I could just, I don't mean to cut you off, Chris. We did not pick Aegon as the company. We relied on RV to do that.
Gotcha, I'm just trying to get to the chain.
I mean, I wouldn't know Aegon from any other company, from Kroll, from George Lynch, from Caswell. I wouldn't know.
And Bill, you bring up a great point, thanks for reminding me. And what we did, we went out to 10 contractors, and we documented this. We went to 10 contractors and asked them to bid on this project, and the only person who agreed to put a bid in was Aegon. We actually did, we documented that, we gave Bill a listing of the
But
folks we talked to.
it's more of a referral and a little bit of an oversight, not a subcontract relationship, correct?
There's absolutely no relation between the two firms, they're completely separate.
Yeah.
interesting, good.
Well, part of your proposal during the last meeting was that you guys would do periodic inspections of their work.
Correct.
Okay.
So we gave a proposal to provide full-time inspection services. Unfortunately, the town did not have the budget to cover our number that we needed. So our budget was cut down by 75%.
Gotcha.
So we did what we could do for the 25% that we were authorized on.
Understood.
And fortunately, Bill and his staff are fantastic. They did a great job coming in and helping out when we weren't permitted to be out.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Well, I guess the next step is then for us to do that, so we can determine about getting these guys paid, or possibly not if the valves aren't
Well,
functioning properly.
with your plan of approach, you'll be able to determine if the water's coming from somewhere else. And if there is no water coming in, then you're gonna make the assumption that the valves actually aren't working. If no water comes in after you do what you do, right?
Right.
I'm looking at my tide app to see when the next high tide is.
July 21st.
So what do we need to get in place to be able to get pump the water out of the pipe though? Do you have one of those pumps?
So I think Scott and I will be able to work on that and determine that. My big right now, I'm very frustrated with the contractor, and I'm somewhat frustrated with Chris and Kevin from RV. Because of the way the whole project was done. Some of it was out of their control, some of it was in their control. April, they weren't installed because of the tides. They didn't get installed until May. And the nights that I was out there with them, there was a lot of negative comments about the project from the guys on the ground. And they seemed to be the guys that were the senior guys there on the ground. And that's what I heard and that's what I saw. So now that the flaps may or may not be working after hearing those comments, it just leads me to believe I don't know if they're working or not. So then the town strapped 2 of the flaps down. We left one open. That rainstorm we had last Friday, 4 inches, 5 inches of rain, pushed that water right out from the street when it was low tide and went right out like a stream out across the bay. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. I think we're gonna be, I think the town will be able to work and determine where the leaking is, whether it's around the flaps or inside the pipe. You know, we are 2 months since, going on 2 months since they gave me the bill. So we're gonna have to move somewhat on that at some point. The material is there, now I gotta determine if it's working correctly or not.
Are those two flaps still closed?
Yes,
Okay, good.
yeah.
And is,
I'll help.
I don't quite understand all of this, but I'm gonna ask the question, can you now rotate the one open flap? So the far southern one would now be closed and one of the two, the middle or it just, like, if it works, if just the southern one is open, what happens if the
Yeah, I mean, we
middle or the
can,
northern one?
I mean, Scott can
does
do that,
make
he's done the
sense
best.
to do?
We went in and we bought clamps to try to clamp them shut, but because of the plastic, of the rib plates coming out, they kept slipping off. So then we had to buy straps and strap them and shut them that way. So we can move those around. It's not easy, he has to get in the water up to here with, just like the guys that installed the flaps. But it can be done.
Is that worth it? I guess, does that help answer any of these questions about are all of the flaps working?
Yeah, we just have to pick a time where we aren't gonna have any rain. So if we strap down all three, the water's just gonna back up on the street. So.
And I would add that the workers who were there were talking to anybody who walked by and shaking their head and saying, this isn't going to work.
So you heard that also?
Oh, personally,
I heard that.
personally, and I was just walking by. They didn't know who I was.
Chris, do you have any idea why they would have said that?
Yeah, I do. Because when I found that out, I was a bit notified, so I asked the contractor, he's not on anymore, but he provided Bill a written statement stating that the labor made the comment, number one wasn't authorized to make the comment, and there was an expression of their frustration because they couldn't get the valve on. Because the week that they decided to try to do the installation, it was a week when the tide was not high, but it wasn't low either. It was very challenging to get the valves on.
You know,
That's why they remobilized several weeks later.
when someone says something's not going to work, it's usually not saying that they're having difficulty with the installation. They're thinking that this isn't going to do what you want it to do. So my instincts
That's
tell me
the
that
interpretation.
my instincts tell me that there was more to under that comment, whether he or she was authorized to say it or not.
The comment is what it is. It was
Yeah.
stated by one of Agion's people. I can't attest to what their intent was. I can only go to their supervisor, who's Jody, to say what's the deal.
So I think one of the things, I mean, you're gonna do what you're talking about doing, but you need to talk to Jody privately and find out what was behind that comment.
I've had several conversations with Jody, and he's firm on his opinion. He's been very consistent with what he said. I hear what you're saying.
Is it possible to bring in a different contractor, one of the other 9 that didn't get picked?
To evaluate the
Evaluate.
quality of the work.
Mhm.
I think if you want to do that, you call the manufacturer. These manufacturers are very consistent. It's their product. They want people to love their product. They don't want everyone to say anything negative about their product. They're going to go out there and they'll be happy to say they want it to work. So if there's something not done correctly, they will tell you.
I guess the big thing that I've never seen, Chris, and I have no doubt, I looked at those gates when they came in on the truck and were just, wow, there's a lot of engineering involved there. But how about the interface where it connects to the pipe? That's what I couldn't see because I wasn't standing in the water like they are, looking at the edges of the pipes or exactly how that connection was made. Was it they fit inside it and then a big band goes around to tighten up on it, or I don't know.
Well, I mean, again, the manufacturer's very specific in how it's supposed to go on, to be strapped on and whatnot. There's no conjecture on how to do it. They tell you how to do it. It's their way or no.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So I was out there when they were installing, trying to get them on, and it was, the water, they built a small dam, they couldn't keep up with the water coming in, so the pipes were not completely out of the water when they put those flaps on.
I saw that.
They did the best they could, they actually brought their heavy piece of equipment, held a piece of thick wood up, and used a piece of equipment to smack it onto the pipe. That was the only way they could get that flap on. Whether that's the way the manufacturer said it should have been installed or not, probably not. But that's what I observed them having to do to get those on the end of those pipes.
Could that have cracked something? when the
Sure
way-
could.
I mean, when you're,
That's why you have to do your investigation. There's no other way,
Right.
there's no other way to resolve this.
and then it'll
But
be.
just to prepare you for that, I wouldn't be surprised if there is some kind of a penetration. The next step is you gotta find a contractor to televise it. So you may wanna start teeing that up while you wait for the high tide.
Well, wait a minute, so if he finds, this is, I'll give you my opinion, I'm
Sure.
the liaison, but if you find that there's no water coming in, okay, when the pipes are clamped shut, okay, then we kind of do know that we've got a problem with flaps, and the next step from my perspective is someone's gotta basically do whatever they need to do to figure out, visually see that they're not working when they're loose, and figure out why they're not working, right? I mean, that to me is the next logical step. Is
And
that your
makes,
opinion, Dawn?
and I would go back, that's the manufacturer's issue.
Well,
Or the installer?
Or the
I
installer.
agree, you're right in terms of the logic behind it. I just got a sneaky suspicion that you're gonna clamp those valves shut. I think you're gonna close off that pipe, I think you're still gonna have water.
Well, we'll find out.
I would just have somebody
We'll
ready,
find out.
because I know you wanna fix this. Have someone in your back pocket, someone ready to come in when you need it, that's all.
Yeah, because right now, we're just guessing this, that, or the other thing.
Exactly.
We gotta have some
Take all the
data.
guesswork,
I
exactly.
agree.
Yes.
Do we have access to a camera when that's all done, so we can try to do it in one
Like,
step?
we can ask the county if their camera system's working, and they have done that for us in the past.
It would be ideal
That
if
would
we're
help.
going through all this work, you're actually going through all this
Right.
work, and then we seal it off, and we have that camera, so we could pinpoint where the leak is. Because if there's a leak and then we all say, well, it's leaking. Well, then we're still gonna have to go back and get a camera back in there again and pay.
It would have been nice if Aegon would have done that the night they were out there,
Yeah.
or come back the next day and done that. We wouldn't be having this discussion. But
Exactly.
they never came back. And it is true, it wasn't in their contract to do it, but they were trying to do it.
And there's a reason why they were trying to do it. That's the other thing, why, if they can visually watch the flaps open and close and are functioning, then why go to the next step? If you're complaining that the contract price is too low, why go through the hassles of doing that to decide if the valves are working? That would be the one thing I kind of question, why they did that, so.
Full moon is the 21st, 3 days, at 6 AM.
Thanks, Chris.
My pleasure, good seeing everybody.
Can't wait for the next high tide.
All right, anybody else have any comments? Good?
Yeah, no comments.
And make a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second?
All right.